We made this.
Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Pick a Disc. I'm your host Matt Latham and this is the podcast someone picks a disc to talk about for whatever reason they want to. And today, this is an episode of First. It's the first non-English speaking language album that we are covering on the podcast, and it's also the first podcast where there's more than one guest on at a time. Yes, I've got Erin and Jacob from the Hits Don't Lie podcast coming on to talk about Shakira's Dónde Están los Ladrones, and I'm hoping I pronounced that right. Feel free to yell at me if I've got it wrong. And it's also a record that's been broken in terms of the shortest amount of time that a guest has returned since they've appeared on the podcast, because Jacob was only on a couple of episodes ago talking about Meds by Placebo, but now he's here with his podcasting partner in crime, Erin, to talk about a very formative album in both their lives and friendship. And there's a nice chat around that and the using it to kind of learn another language and just like shared memories and stuff. And it's a really fascinating album, and I'm very gracious that they both decided to come on to the podcast to talk about it. And you'll be hearing that conversation in a straight minute. But now we're going to just briefly mention that there are, of course, ways to support the podcast. You can subscribe on your favourite podcast apps of choice. You can follow us on all the different social medias. We're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram under Pick a Disc. There's also a Discord channel in the show notes as well, if you so wish to join in and say hello. So, I can't think of anything else that I have to say, so there's nothing left but to speak to Jacob and Erin. Okay, so this is exciting. This is like a couple of firsts for the podcast. So I have two guests of nearly... It's nearly happened previously, but because of unfortunate circumstances, it's not happened. But I finally have an episode with two guests, which is Jacob and Erin from the Hits Don't Like podcast. So, how are you both doing?
Hello, we're doing great.
Doing great.
Cool. So this is going to be exciting, and so it's a first for that. It's also a first. I'm not going to reveal the album. I'm going to get you to reveal the album in a second, but it's a first in that it's an album that's not in English. I don't think we've had a non-English album on the podcast before, which is very exciting. There's also a record in that it's probably the closest a guest has returned. So it's only been about 2 episodes since I can't get rid of Jacob, which is he turned up for 1 episode and I can't get rid of you.
That's what so many people in my life have said about me.
I mean, you've turned up on another podcast I do as well. I mean, it's just like, I'm getting concerned. And yeah, so it's, again, so that's another record, but unfortunately, Erin, you're not the first fluent Spanish speaker that's been on the podcast, though, unfortunately. That record's already been broken all the way back in episode 9 with Tilly, unfortunately. But, but other than that, there's a lot of records being broken for this one, so this is a kind of couple of firsts. So, so I'm quite looking forward to this. So Jacob and Erin, why don't you tell the lovely listeners the disc that you've picked for us to talk about today?
Yes, we have both together chosen the album Dónde Están los Ladrones by Shakira.
And why have you picked it?
I mean, have you listened to it?
I hope I have.
We chose this album not only because we're both huge fans of Shakira and we share that with each other, but this album specifically is a very special album, not only for personal reasons, but also just thinking about how nearly perfect this album is in every way, how it's unskippable from start to finish. It's a really special album. And so we started with, what's an artist we both like. We decided on Shakira. And of course, to me, this is like the one to choose. If you're going to choose one Shakira album, I think Dónde Están los Ladrones is it.
Yeah. I also think this album is a very foundational piece of our friendship, Erin. There's just so many moments that I can think of where we have been hanging out in a car, whatever, and then either singing, listening to, or just reminiscing about songs from this album.
I agree.
Okay, because I think particularly, I don't want to say it's the gimmick of having two guests, but at the moment, because it's not happened before, what I find quite interesting is that you've got an album that you say is quite foundational in your friendship. From the Hits That Lie podcast that you both host, and through what you've revealed to us as audience members, you've known each other for nearly 3 decades. Is that correct?
More than 30 years.
So you were friends way before this album came out.
Oh, for sure. And I think that we need to note that we did not discover this album until a few years after it came out. Mm-hmm, but to answer your question, yes, we were friends well before anything, before we could even spell our name.
So okay, in terms of music, so was your friendship like tied to music before then? Was it? You mentioned that this is quite pivotal in like personal reasons as well. Was it? Were you close before this album, or was this like the foundation of like your pop music fandom? What ties this to kind of your friendship then?
I mean, at some point, music became really important in our relationship. But if I'm thinking back
later
to when
down
we were
the
just
line,
really young, I mean, it was video games and just playing around. We were sort of neighbors, and so you just play with whatever kids are around, jumping on a trampoline or whatever. But then as we matured, as we got older, I think we both individually realized how much music was important to us and would gravitate toward similar artists such as Shakira.
So teenage us came together about music.
Yeah.
But we already had a long established friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when did Shakira enter your lives? For some context in the UK, I think, I mean, I don't know whether she was, I don't think she was known at all. I think she came onto the scene in the UK with Wherever. I can never remember which one's first.
Whenever, Wherever.
Yeah. That song that I know quite well and I can't remember the title of, which, very embarrassing, but, we'll skip past that bit. So I think it was her English language, I think, debut in the UK that pretty much raised the profile over here. What was it like in the US? Did you know her before then, or was it the same that time, or?
It was the same time in the United States. That album was called Laundry Service. Mm-hmm. Whenever, Wherever was the first single from that. Mm-hmm. That album is important because that's her crossover album to the United States market, right?
Yeah. And that was our entry point as well.
That was our entry point. And then after discovering Laundry Service, we then went backwards and we discovered Dónde Están los Ladrones, and then the album before that called Pies Descalzos.
Do you remember the first moments you heard her English language debut? Oh my God, this is really, I can't.
Laundry Service.
The lead single, which name
Whenever,
I
Wherever.
don't definitely remember. Whenever, Wherever. I'm going to write that down because it's really embarrassing. I keep forgetting that. Whenever.
Yes, I specifically remember the exact moment that I discovered Shakira. I was home sick from school one day, and I was just lying on the couch watching MTV, which we all remember. It used to actually be music videos all day. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I was watching. And then I saw the music video come on for Whenever, Wherever. I saw the opening moments. She's coming out of the water. It's mysterious. Then she explodes out of the water, and it's
Who is this magical
amazing,
creature?
right? It's this amazing pop song with all of these world instruments included, and I think my eyes were enormous, and my jaw basically dropped. Like, who is this? And I didn't pay attention. Do you remember how they would use the name of the song and the artist in the beginning, and then they would flash it again at the end? So I wasn't paying attention at first. So I was like, I have to know who this is. I have to know who this is. Watch the music video. Waited for the end. It said Shakira. I can remember like throwing the blanket off myself, leaving the couch and like running to my computer to dial up to the modem and search Shakira to find out who she was. And of course, the next day when I came back to school, I had to tell Jacob.
I just got this image that you being like really sick and just lying down on the couch, just like unable to move, just like forced to watch MTV.
Oh
and
no,
suddenly...
I wasn't sick.
Erin's level of sick for school times was very low. The bar was set very low for Erin to be sick from school.
So it wasn't just like a case of like Shakira miraculously cured all the ailments and like.
No, I was hardly sick. No. I was fine, but I was homesick from school. And then I was definitely energized after watching Whenever, Wherever.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So I'm assuming then, did you learn Shakira the next day when Erin told you then, Jacob?
I must have. I don't remember the exact moment, but I must have, because from then on, we were just learning Shakira together, and Erin would go back and learn the older stuff and then, burn a CD and give it to me. And it was just magical.
But don't forget the most important part is that this album hit us, talking about Laundry Service, talking about her crossover debut, while we were taking Spanish 1 class. So it was the perfect, that's why we latched onto it, because we could go and listen to the lyrics of her Spanish songs, which Laundry Service was a bilingual album. And then immediately, I think not very long after Laundry Service came out, I immediately went to buy Dónde Están los Ladrones, and I learned so much Spanish through that. I often say that Shakira was my real Spanish teacher.
Yeah, because through Hits Don't Lie, like you recently had an episode with the Shakira podcast,
Shakipedia Pod.
I'm gonna make the thing now. If I butcher any attempt at Spanish, feel free to yell at me and just correct me. Don't. I'm gonna apologize. I'm gonna try my best. I'm just gonna try my best. So, and I'm right in thinking, are you both quite fluent in Spanish?
I'm pretty fluent. I'm a Spanish teacher, so I have to be.
I studied and took Spanish for quite a long time, and I was okay at a point, but now it's kind of gone, especially studying a different language. I sort of don't have room in my brain to have both of them for some reason. So now all I speak is Shakira lyrics. So if you want to talk to me about love or
and
loss.
Bad Bunny.
Oh, and Bad Bunny lyrics, yes. So those two, if they say it in their songs, I can probably form some sentences around it.
I totally relate. During my kind of secondary school years, from about 11 to 16, at the school I had, you'd either do French or German, and my half of the school did German, and I was actually pretty good with it. I was one of like the very few. I was one of the very few to get like one of the highest grades in the year, and I think to this day, I got the highest exam mark for my GCSE German. And I still didn't win. I still didn't win the German award at the end of year achievement evening when I left school, which I'm still slightly annoyed about. But other than that, but this is an episode about me venting out at my old school. But I do remember that I think near the end, just before the exams, that my the teacher that I had at the time, he was a guy called Herr Schultes, who was from the Schwarzwald, the Black Forest area in the southwest of Germany. And he showed us this kind of video from a band called The Prinzen. The song was called Deutschland. And I think I got obsessed with that song. And my brain can still remember quite a lot of the grammar rules of German. So quite a lot of kind of the verb structures and stuff, even though I've not done it for about half my life now. And my big error with it, or my big flaw with my German, was I can never remember vocab. I can never remember the words. And apart from the lyrics to that one song. So
Right.
so yeah, so when you're saying that you can speak fluent in Shakira lyrics, I can feel I'm almost I can do that with one De Princeton song, and perhaps
If I'm not mistaken, you sent that to us for our mailbag following our foreign language songs.
Yeah,
episode.
I think so.
Yeah. So that's
maybe in the episode. I can't remember.
I think it's mentioned. Yeah, because that song's quite that song is forever embedded in my head. And there's a whole thing about Schumacher not driving for Mercedes in it that I've always remembered as well. But I completely relate to the whole kind of fluent in Shakira lyrics, although it's just one lyric for me. But so it kind of helped you. It kind of helped you kind of learn a language that would end up being your career. Erin, that's correct. That's right.
Definitely. Obviously, it goes without saying, this was a hugely impactful album to my life.
Oh yeah. So was it like kind of the first non-English album you remember owning and listening to, or was it?
Definitely. Absolutely.
Same. Yeah, definitely.
And that, I'm assuming that led to other artists, and is that other
Yes.
languages as well, or was it mainly just Spanish?
Always just Spanish.
How about you, Jacob? Because I know you're based in Japan. Did you eventually venture into Japanese
I've definitely
music?
branched out, but that didn't happen until, after college. So for the longest time, it was just Spanish was the only other language that I would listen to. Now I don't mind. There's something about spending all that time listening to Spanish songs when I am not fluent in Spanish, and so it takes me a bit to get meaning from some of the songs sometimes, because I can still use what I know to figure out, most of the song. But there is this special treat that I find in listening to songs in a language that you don't know, where you just get this sort of vibe and energy from the song first, and you get to experience this song in this special way that is beyond the words first, and then you can go learn the words and you get it on a deeper level. But I really enjoy that moment with a foreign language song.
And Jacob, I actually have a question for you, and this is about either Spanish or Japanese. Do you ever have those moments where you've been listening to the same song in another language for years and years and years, and you're humming it, you're singing along, you know most of the lyrics? Have you ever had that moment like I have, where something you've heard 30 times suddenly clicks with you, and you're listening and you realize you now understand what those words say?
Yes. So many times.
You haven't gone back and looked at the lyrics, but it's like, okay,
you just
now
never thought of it.
Now this is the first time I'm realizing I actually understand this.
Yeah, there is that moment. There is that moment where maybe you learned it phonetically, or maybe you just are just now picking up on one little word that you weren't saying correctly in the sentence that they're trying to say, and then suddenly your brain puts all the puzzle pieces together without you even trying to. It's a magical moment.
It is.
Oh, okay. I think I don't think I've had that much, because apart from like the bits of German that I remember, I think I have I have 3 albums from Japanese artists, but one's in Japanese, and that's the Dragon Ash album, Viva la Revolution, I think is the English title. And the only reason I know that is because the song, it's got the song that's on the end of the film Battle Royale on it. Which I think is Shizuka no Hibi Nan Kaidan Wo, I think it is. Which I did find randomly in a Naosaka record shop, and I was like, and I got strange looks. I got strange looks from the shopkeeper going, "What's this English person doing?"
It's a good song.
Yeah. But I've got, and I think Homecomings is a band that I just got obsessed with randomly, and then managed to. I was using Spotify in I think the Tower Records in Shibuya. I was pointing to the cashier and one of the assistants saying, "Do you have this?" And then he vanished, and then vanished, and I would just carry on browsing. And 50 minutes later, he walks up to me out of breath, holding 2 albums, going. I was like, "Oh, okay." Yeah,
you made
so that
this poor person run down to some basement warehouse, dust off this section of albums.
But yeah, that was the only kind of notable ones that I have in my collection, unfortunately. But so my kind of experience with like foreign language songs is limited. But I think a couple of times I'll occasionally go and revisit the Princeton song, and you can kind of like, that verb's there and stuff. And I do think that perhaps if I listened to more than just the one song in German, that I perhaps might have been able to carry on doing German post
right.
16, but I didn't. But I do find that quite interesting, particularly I think as well, particularly where you kind of like it helps like an aid. Is a lot of kind of the vocab that you kind of obtain from like song lyrics. Then how does it work? Do you sometimes think of, if like you're trying to think of a word, it just goes, oh yeah, it was kind of like, I don't know, the TV show Sherlock, where he has his mind palace, and you basically open up like a kind of imaginary database of song lyrics, and then you find the word you need? Or how does that work?
It does sometimes happen like that. There's a lot of phrases and words, a lot of sort of rare words, because she's very literary. She's very poetic. So a lot of these sort of other words, these advanced, very specific words, I've learned from her. And I should mention that if you're doing like I did and you're learning a new language from an album, it goes along hand in hand really well as you're studying the language formally, because you can take what you know, bring it back to those lyrics, and then that, along with maybe a word-to-word dictionary, sort of slowly over time really get to know the album, which is, I'm very fortunate to have had that experience through this album, taking it at the same time as Spanish class.
And one thing you have to be careful about with this album especially, but with Shakira in general, is that she is very poetic, and
that's the thing.
Plays with words, and she puts these ideas together in a way that is not normal for human beings. But she does it so craftily, and it just is perfect in her music, and it's beautiful imagery. And so if you try to say these phrases that she is saying in these songs, sometimes word for word, you're going to come across a little weird, maybe.
Yes.
So that's something
I've been
to consider.
Corrected. Yes, I've been corrected by a Spanish speaker more than once, because I was trying to pull a line from a Shakira song, but use it in a sentence or like in a conversation, and they were like, "Wait, what? Say that again."
Yeah, there's a couple of instances. I mean, I've not gone through and tried to attempt to translate every single song. I've only done it a couple of times for a couple of them. But I think as we're going around a couple of tracks, there's a couple of times where I'm like, okay, if in English this sounds weird, but I'm assuming in context it's completely different to what it's reading.
Not always.
Yeah. But,
not always, because yes, it makes a difference when you're translating it, but if it sounds sort of unusual in English, most likely it sounds a little unusual in Spanish too, because just like Jacob said, she has this really artful way of putting together words and ideas in her lyrics.
Oh, okay. So I think before we move on to talk about like the album a bit more in depth, for anyone who's unaware of who Shakira is, or doesn't have that much, didn't know that much, like me for example, so Shakira is a Colombian singer born and raised in Barranquilla. Is that correct?
Barranquilla.
Okay. Barranquilla. Okay. She's been referred to as the Queen of Latin music and is noted for her musical versatility. She made her... actually, I want to skip that bit because there's a couple of... I want to skip the bit about her and about how long she's been in the industry, because I'm going to mention that in a second. But, so she made her English language debut with the album Laundry Service, as we said. It sold over 30 million copies worldwide, buoyed by the international success of the singles Whenever, Wherever, which I do know the order of because I'm reading it off Wikipedia at the moment. Considering I've known that song for 20 years, I'm still slightly annoyed I've forgotten which one comes first. And that album propelled her to a reputation as a leading crossover artist throughout the English pretty much worldwide. So she's had several albums after. She's like had other hits. There's a song called "Hips Don't Lie." I don't know if you two have heard of it.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. I think there's a nice pun that can probably make a good podcast title. I think if you better hurry up before someone
will
nicks
do it one day.
Yes, but So Shakira, who I listened to a podcast called The Naughty's Naughty, and I think it's around 2001. Basically, The Naughty's Naughty. I've mentioned this on the podcast like several times. They're going through the UK top 10, so every song that went in the UK top 10 from the year 2000 to 2009, and they got to October 2001, and they did Whenever, Wherever, and I was there going like, that song can't be 20 years old, and
right,
and like
it's crazy,
and I'm like, it's one of those things where that song still seems quite new, and I'm like, Shakira's not been around for 20 years, and then when I started doing research into Shakira, I I think she's now 45. I assumed she was much younger than that. And then when I've looked into it, her first debut album was in 1991 with I can't remember what the name of it was called.
It was, I think, Mahia.
Yeah, in 1991. And then I saw the album cover, and the album cover looks like something from the 80s, and I was like, and that kind of blew my mind.
Right.
It reminds me of the, I don't know if the pop singer Tiffany ever got to the US.
Yes.
I think you're allowed. Yeah, it looks like a Tiffany album cover, and I was like, I was like, how was Shakira around at that? In that era of pop music, and I think she was like 14 at the time. I think
14, around that.
Yeah, and I'm genuinely surprised that she just seems to have been there since like the dawn of time. And like she's got like a massive legacy, was a massive superstar before she even got to the English speaking world. I was just like. So I knew she had she had Spanish albums beforehand, but I just didn't realise how long in the industry she's been. So so her first album is over 30 years old. And
needless to say, her music style has taken a lot of twists and turns over the decades. Just like any long-term artist that you would expect them to have a long career and to have new sounds and try new things over time.
I was just going to double check to see how it syncs up with Kylie Minogue's discography, because that's how I'm marking stuff. And Kylie Minogue was only on her fourth album at that time as well. Which is the song's like "Give Me Just a Little More Time" that was out, and I was trying to think, because I was trying to figure out if that predated any of Kylie Minogue stuff, and I was like. I'm still. I think my brain's kind of broken by the fact that
Locomotion came out in 87, so and Magia was 91, I think, so a little bit earlier. Yeah,
and I was like, but there was that time where during kind of still that she was releasing music in when Kylie Minogue was releasing still kind of chart pop music, and I think you've broken me. But that album was like kind of like, again, it's very rare that I start listening to other albums or songs. I've not listened to any other album in full, but I just started picking bits and pieces from some of her earlier stuff just to get an idea of what she sounded like. And her first couple of albums are quite ballady, which I was quite surprised of because the album art does feel like it's basically like a Tiffany / Kylie Minogue album. but then as you're saying, it's like her music takes twists and turns. A single that I think from the album before this one, which I think kind of has very similar sounds to what we'll talk about in this album. I was genuinely surprised and was not expecting for her to sound a lot like Alanis Morissette. There's a very strong pop rock vibe to it, which kind of evolves into this album, and yeah, I wasn't. I think there's a couple of songs on this album that I was expecting the whole album to sound like, but it's actually in the minority.
Well, I wanted to ask you, Matt, before doing all this research into Shakira, what was your impression? What was your overall thoughts of Shakira before actually going through these older albums? Who did you think she was?
I think I only know quite a couple of singles, so I've not really listened to any of the. I'm not really delved into any of the albums, so I wouldn't, or anything like that. So whenever, wherever I knew, Hips Don't Lie, I knew Waka Waka, which was the 2010 World Cup song she did. Underneath Your Clothes, which I remember, I think is also from was that from Laundry Service?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that one, and if I'm going to be honest, I wasn't a fan of that song, and still slightly not. And I apologise if that offends anyone. But I'm hoping to redeem myself. I'm hoping to redeem myself a bit later on. Just please carry on listening. But yeah, so I got the impression that she's kind of like a kind of dancey pop, basically like how whenever wherever it combines kind of like non-English country, well, instruments from English countries or kind of synth pop music that we had at the time. So less, what I was expecting kind of a lot more like that, where it's kind of like the anti-Max Martin or the anti-Greg Kirsten kind of feel, where there's a lot more interesting stuff happening with kind of Latin music. So I was expecting a bit like a lot more of that, and there are elements of that in this, but there's a very mid-90s alternative through line through this that I was not expecting at all.
Well, it was very of the time as far as the female pop rock, leaning rock, guitar chick. That was very popular at that time.
I didn't realise, like, because it's in my mind, there's like a very strong Jagged Little Pill influence through it.
Absolutely.
And
it's often compared to that album, yes.
Yeah, I was not expecting that at all. I was expecting kind of like a lot of kind of, again, whenever, wherever, where it's just kind of like almost dance pop, but with kind of a lot of Latin American kind of
traditional instruments and sounds and everything.
So I was expecting that, and I was quite surprised, and surprised in a good way. So I liked this more than I was expecting. I liked the album a lot more than I was expecting to. I found it a lot more interesting as well. I was expecting kind of like a mixture of. I was expecting quite, particularly when I went back to some of the earlier albums. I was expecting like a hybrid of like Underneath Your Clothes style ballads alongside that as well. So, what was it? I mean, this has quite a very alternative kind of pop rock element to it, which, again, considering you've both picked this album, I was quite surprised that you kind of picked this, because considering of what the kind of almost like pop music you talk about on Hits Don't Lie, this feels a lot more kind of almost more alternative than the kind of music you speak about on your podcast. So what was it about this album specifically that drew you to it? Do you think there's perhaps a sentimental attachment because it's your first kind of non-English album? Do you think that's an element to it, or was there other aspects of the album that you was drawn to?
I think it's a combination of that. Of course, there's the sentimental attachment with it being the first Spanish language album, but I don't want to discount the importance of this album to the Latin music world. It's not just a personal favorite for me and Jacob. This is a very beloved album. It was a huge hit.
I also think it just has some of the most beautiful, it has this sort of alt pop sound a lot of the times, but it also just has some of the most beautiful melodies and lyrics. And there are some amazing love songs. There are some heartbreaking love songs in this. It's just so good.
And it's important to say that this album is not strictly like an alternative or a rock pop album. There is a mix of sounds and influences and styles on this album from different cultures. And she does tend to do that in her songs, which is great. She's sort of like makes a melting pot of music of all of her influences. And so I just want to point out, it's not, unlike Jagged Little Pill, which is a lot more like straight alternative, here you do have a blend of the world sounds, the world instruments, and that little bit of pop side.
Yeah, I always don't think pop on its own should be labelled as a genre. It's a suffix of other genres. It's not just pop music. It's like electro dance pop or grunge pop or alternative pop or indie pop.
Yeah, it's a big umbrella term.
Yeah, I always think that pop's kind of like a kind of like suffix, which means it's perhaps got elements of melody or catchiness to it.
Right. In my world, pop is a genre. And when you tell me pop, I totally get it. I'm there. I know exactly what to picture.
So in terms of what would you define as pop? Would you define this as a straight pop album?
Oh, no. This is definitely alternative, like rock pop. What do you think, Jacob?
Yeah, I think you've got to call it something like alternative rock pop for sure. But there are still those breakouts on this album like Ciega Sorda Muda or Ojos Así, where how do you even place those songs? Because she's just doing something so new and cool.
I've always tried to kind of, particularly with albums on this podcast, try to kind of link, particularly ones that I've not heard before, try and kind of link perhaps more modern contemporaries that I'm familiar with. And in terms of kind of like how it kind of manipulates genre or kind of like pays tribute to kind of different elements, this kind of reminds me a lot of the Rina Sawayama album in terms of being able to, how it has certain stings of different genres, or it kind of incorporates kind of like influences, like on the first track, it's Ciega Sorda Muda, yeah, like for example, like with which I've learned of a style of music called ranchera, which which is kind of which like a form of kind of like traditional Mexican music that kind of has that kind of accented like brass music throughout it, in a very similar way that like Rina Sawayama's album kind of incorporates kind of nu metal, and then then later on the album you've got elements of kind of like dance pop and mixed in again with that kind of like traditional Central American sound, in a similar way to how Rina Sawayama uses R&B with pop music as well. And that's kind of, and once that kind of comparison was in my head, it made the album click more for me as well. And it was quite fun trying to see these different elements come into play. So
yeah, I think that's fair. I like that. I like that connection to Rina and her idea of what is pop and how to mix and match things. That's one thing I love about her. And I think that's fair to kind of apply it to this album too. There's just so many layers and so many things happening all the time.
Okay, my knowledge of kind of Latin music, kind of the Latin music kind of industry is quite limited. But from what I gather, it's got quite a star-studded producing background. And I think Emilio Estefan produced it, and from what I'm reading, he's quite famous.
Yes, that is Emilio Estefan, who is Gloria Estefan's husband.
Oh, yes.
So it's important to say, I should have mentioned this earlier, her first two albums, Magia and Peligro, those were you can't even find them on streaming anymore because that was a very young, like preteen Shakira. Some songs were on those albums that were included from her childhood, and then they were Colombia only.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you can really find them anymore. So the next album, Pies Descalzos, that was sort of like her international Latin market debut. So her career kind of rebooted with that album. And that album became so popular that it caught the eye of Emilio Estefan, who I guess he sort of had his finger on the pulse, or he definitely had his finger on the pulse of the music industry. And he knew, I think he sensed that the Latin explosion was coming. It was in the works. And he was like, this is someone that could really break over into the market. And he did. He called it really early because she wouldn't cross over for about 5 years later after they met.
What also found quite interesting as well in comparison to the kind of the American and the English style of pop music is that there's, and in kind of like interviews or kind of retrospectives I've been reading about the album, there's quite a level of control that Shakira had over everything as well.
And still does. Yes.
Yeah. She's all lyrics. I think she's the sole writer for every song on this album.
And the missing songs that I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yes. She's not she's not the sole writer. She works with and has worked for years with a couple of songwriters, and they are also co-writers on some of the songs on this album.
Oh, okay. But she's got a very kind of strong hand in the kind of producing as well. So she's got producer credit for everything.
Absolutely, and even like tours, music videos, the outfit that she's going to wear, she is very hands-on.
Yeah, and she's got a harmonica credit in the
an iconic harmonica credit.
Yeah.
Yes, we recently clipped it on our Instagram page.
We'll probably mention the song a bit more general. Yeah, because I pretty much kind of re-skimmed through your Shakira special later on, and you do bring that up. We'll go back to that when we get to that as well. But yeah, and we'll get to the impact on it a bit later. So this was kind of like the kind of. So was this like more of a breakthrough for her in the kind of Spanish market then? So was this the breakthrough album for her on there before is that correct?
I think the previous album before this, Pies Descalzos, was, but I would say now this is harder for me to speak on because, I'm not from a Latin American country and I wasn't aware of her at this time. So my knowledge is pretty limited, but just basically I do know that while Pies Descalzos sort of lit the fuse and Dónde Están los Ladrones sort of exploded.
I think that's a good way to put it.
And that's the most I can speak on that because this is something that was happening culturally that wasn't
separate
happening around me. Right.
So I think it's quite interesting to kind of read the kind of impact that it had on that kind of scene and like whole side of an industry that again I'm not too familiar with at all. But let's move on to the actual songs themselves. So again, which songs jump out to you that you want to speak about first?
We don't have time to do every single song.
And you know what makes it even harder to choose is a whopping 8 out of the 11 songs were singles. So we couldn't even just pick the singles. Yes, really.
Wow.
And all of them deserved.
All deserved. Actually, all 11 deserved. Justice for the other 2.
Jacob, why don't you start with Ciega Sordomuda?
Okay, that's my jam. Ciega Sordomuda is one of my favorites off the album. I am a fool for the little mariachi influence that goes through it with the horns and just the whole vibe of the song. It's
a really great combination of the mariachi or like Matt said, the norteña, or I think you said ranchero,
Yeah.
and pop. And don't you agree? It just blends them so perfectly.
So perfectly. And the whole song is about how whenever she sees this person physically, doesn't she even say just your body?
Mm-hmm.
Even when your anatomy is in front of me.
I can't think straight every time your anatomy appears in front of me. Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's not even, it's just physical, this thing that happens to her where she goes blind, deaf, and dumb, and she becomes all clumsy, and it's just such a fun song.
So earlier when I mentioned about literal translations and taking things out of context. So I listened to this song first, and I thought, okay, and I think when we recorded the Meds episode, I was asking, me and Jacob was having a chat about whether if I should go and try and translate it or see if I can figure out what these mean in English. And he was like, yeah, have a go if you want. And I started having a go. And like one of the first lines was, every time I run out of argument and mythology, every time your anatomy appears in front of me, which I think is what the Microsoft Edge translation's done. And immediately I took that the wrong way. I'm like, oh, okay.
No, take it at face value.
She means it.
Oh, okay, right. Because I was like, okay. Oh, okay. So this is the singer who did the "Breasts are Small and Humble" line. So yeah, this might make sense.
She means it. It's just a great song. This one, I don't know. It just makes me so happy, and I wouldn't be me if I didn't mention the MTV Unplugged performance of this, where she had an actual mariachi band on stage with her, and it's just a top 10 experience.
I think that's the superior version. Everybody should check out the
everybody should
MTV
check out that.
Unplugged version of Ciega Sordo Muda to get the real experience.
Mm-hmm.
I might have to check that one out. But in terms, this song though, I absolutely really like this song. This song has not left my head since I've heard it. It's just refusing to leave. It's refusing to leave. I genuinely love this song. I think it's great. I'll tell you what I really do like though. I love the middle eight.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because out of nowhere suddenly these electric guitars that I can only describe as crunchy, these like kind of crunchy electric guitars suddenly enter the mix, and I never notice things in the mix that often. Again, hosting a music podcast probably not the best thing to admit. I'm not going to attempt to say what it is, but the English translations where she's just basically going like skinny, ugly, dishevelled, clumsy, silly, slow, foolish, unhinged. But
the spoken word part, or it's like almost spoken word. Yep.
Yeah, I thought that
used to be one of Erin's claims to fame.
Okay.
Doing these
can't
fast
do it
parts
anymore.
in this whole album. There's a couple fast parts in this album that Erin, we would all have this playing in the car singing along, and then we just turn to Erin to let her have her moment.
So it's basically like that one guy who seems to know every single rap break from a pop song.
Right.
Well,
yes.
I dislike those people. I mean, I was never that kind of person.
We've heard you rapping. You did it on our podcast.
We released that.
yes, the evidence of that is on there now. But no, yeah, to be fair, I mean, that bridge I think is my favourite part of the album. I really like that bridge. I love that song. This song's really good. Yeah, I say now, this is the part where I'm like, okay, this album's gonna, because it has that kind of almost, it doesn't go as alternative yet, but it's that kind of interesting mix with kind of.
There's a hint of that sort of leading you into the album.
That's why I think it's a great album opener, because it's telling you, hey, I may be a female in, this industry, but you're not just about to get the typical whatever from me. Here's a brand new sound. Here's a mix of influences, and buckle in, because we're going to go through a lot more throughout this album.
Yeah, and I think it's a very good advertisement, a very good opening, kind of inciting the incidents. If I going back, if you're thinking of this as like a story / movie or something, it's your kind of pre-credit sequence that hooks you in. It's your teaser, it's your television episode teaser, and it's a really good one. So yeah, it's a very strong opener. Where do you want to move on to next?
I would like to talk about the song Tu, which is one of her best ballads, even to this day. It's a more simple piano style ballad. And she knows how to just bring it home with emoting and making us feel the way she feels in this song.
Yeah. What about you, Jacob? What do you think of this one?
Everything that she said. It's just one of the most dramatic songs on the album, and every time it comes on, I think I just sing the lyrics as well as I can, because I can't, but with my hand on my heart, just, looking up to the skies, singing. It's so good.
And it remains one of my favorite Shakira songs today. Absolutely.
Same.
Top 5 for me.
Okay, so what's the general gist of the actual song lyrics then? So it's one of the ones I've not attempted to translate.
Okay, well, actually, I'd say it's pretty straightforward lyrically. The song is called Tu, which means you. And throughout the song, she is describing everything about you. Who are you to me? And throughout the song, she's sort of saying, I would give everything up. I would give you, I would give up my shoes, my diary, even my own body. My lips are yours. Everything, just to stay with you. And I believe when we discussed this song with Shakipedia Pod, we sort of ended up labeling songs like this as a pre-breakup song. Mm-hmm. It's a heartbreaking ballad, but the breakup has not happened yet. So all of this sadness comes from a place of, I wouldn't be anything without you if I lost you.
Right. Because
it hurts to even think about it.
She is talking about the person, like what would happen if the person did go away. And so it is sort of contemplating how she would even live.
So it's not like a love song. It's more of a case of
it's an extreme love song. It's I wouldn't be anything without you type of love song. Like, I'm depressed right now. I love you so much that I'm depressed just even thinking about what would happen if you left.
Yeah.
That is what this song is. And even if you don't speak Spanish, you're right there with her, with the mood and just the way she emotes when she sings. You can feel it right alongside with her as you listen.
Yeah, because you do get that kind of like feeling from that. And I think one of the kind of more memorable aspects of Shakira, I think she's got a very unique voice and vocal delivery. No, I don't want to say operatic. There's a very unconventional. It's very like unconventional. No,
she's a weird vibrato sometimes. Yeah, she can do.
Yeah, it's not your typical kind of pop voice. There's a what's the word I'm searching for? What's the word? I don't know music terms again, which is again bad for a music podcast host. But I say, yeah, there's a very unique voice to it that you can, if you heard a song by her that you've not heard before, you'll instantly know the voice. You'll recognize the voice.
She has very much an identifiable voice. You know it's her.
And I think, and that kind of like goes through to like other songs that you wouldn't expect the delivery of those lyrics to come from that kind of song. And she does have that kind of ability to kind of like also kind of emote and kind of create that feeling about what she's singing about. So I can kind of get that. I kind of got that. I think I didn't realize it was kind of like a more, not negative, but a more depressing love song. I assumed it was like I don't say conventional. What am I saying?
Well, yeah, that's the thing about Shakira.
She's have a
probably
unique
not
voice.
Going to do too much conventional when it comes to a love song. I think Underneath Your Clothes is probably her most conventional love song. Everything else has a bit of a spin or a little bit of extra layers to it.
Yeah, I know. I definitely got that from this, and the songs that I kind of dipped into as well in terms of trying to translate them. So if we move to another song, what are the songs what's the next song you want to talk about?
Oh man, I mean, Si Te Vas, the second song on the album. Yeah. If we've just talked about 2, which is this love song where she's giving herself completely and she's afraid of what's going to happen if this person leaves, Si Te Vas is basically
the reverse of that.
The reverse of that. Yeah. Because in Si Te Vas, she's saying, like, if you leave, yeah, my sky's going to be gray and it's going to be bad for me. But you know what? If you leave for that person, if you leave for that piece of leather, if you leave for that witch, do not return because I will not be here.
I won't even be in the same town anymore. So if you're going to leave, don't come back. Matter of fact, if you do, I'm not even going to be in the same city. Okay? She literally says that.
Yeah, because this is one of the songs that I kind of tried to roughly translate, and it has that kind of like energy. I think energy of that kind of, oh yeah, you can bugger off. Yeah, like a
right.
Kind of, it's a bugger off song. I'm gonna refer to it as that. Like ways I'm trying to think of other examples where you've got, and there's hundreds, and my mind's going completely blank of like, all right, then you can, if you're gonna cheat on me or leave, then do one. And I can't think of any other examples at the moment, and my mind's gone blank. But I'm thinking of Case of the X. Is it Case of the X by Maya?
Yes.
Oh yeah, by Maya.
Yeah, that kind of, and There You Go by Pink. There's another one. That kind of like, well, screw you then. Looking at some of the terms of phrases which are through Google Translate, and again, I assumed it was just like kind of quirks of the algorithm being used, but then again, as you tell me, it might be deliberate. Where stuff, like for example, the translation that Google Translate gave me for this one is that it only has a couple of fingers in front, and you'll find it does not brush its teeth well. Now I don't know who she's supposed to be talking about. She's talking about him or her.
Oh, let me look.
Wait, where is that?
That's in verse 1.
She probably doesn't really say it. That's how Google.
Oh, it's probably the other person. Because she is kind of tearing down the other person as well.
It's not it. It's about her.
Okay.
Don't come back if you find out that she doesn't brush her teeth well.
Right.
She takes all your money. Blah 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 blah. All these things. When you find those things out, don't come back. I'm not going to be here. Just replace it with she.
Okay.
Yeah, she's not tearing down the other woman. Well, she kind of is. But she's basically saying if your expectations that you think are there aren't met, don't be coming back this way, because you know what? Now nothing is important to me in this world and I can just go and be free.
And my absolute favorite line in this is where she's like, every new broom always sweeps well. That's a Shakira-ism, right?
That's the perfect one. That you just know what she's talking about.
See, now, yeah, I think I was discussing the English translations of the lyrics. I've always felt with wherever, I've always found the construction of the verses quite interesting in that song. There's some quite interesting lyrical play in that.
Exactly.
And and I think, and I've not really appreciated that a lot more until this conversation actually, when you're saying that it's very deliberate. Yes, there's the part of me who is very quite into kind of unique lyrical voices in terms of songs. This is ticking quite a few boxes for me, and I generally wasn't expecting to say that going into this album. So there's, I think, again, the translation goes, following from that line you said, it says, then you're going to see the bristles worn out when wrinkles cut off your skin and cellulite invades your legs. You'll come back from your hell with your tail between your horns, which is the...
Right.
And again, I'm going to assume that is what she literally means.
I've got the lyrics open right now, just making sure. Yes, and I love the part also, like you said, where she says, "You will come back from your hell."
Mhm.
You know.
So I'm assuming the tail between your horns. I'm assuming that's a deliberate play on the tail between your legs. But assuming like just like because you're an evil person for leaving, you got horns rather than
Con el rabo entre los cuernos. This is saying you're making me learn something here because I've never explored that line. Con el rabo entre los cuernos. So I think that's beyond our beyond our level.
Anyone listening who wants to help us out, feel free to tweet us at Pickadisc. What exactly does first two mean in that song?
Well, specifically that line, because that's beyond my level. It does indeed look like she's saying with your tail between their horns. It may not go deeper than that, other than it rhymed, and it had the correct number of syllables. So
I quite like the idea that she's deliberately spinning on the tail between your legs, but referring to
I think you've got it. I think you've got a good view of it.
But yeah, again, that's another song that my notes pretty much say Alanis Morissette for this one as well.
This is the most Alanis heavy song on the album, I would say.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I think and I think it was this point, particularly after the first song. This is the point where I'm like, oh, okay, wasn't expecting that.
Well, this definitely must have been a surprise when this came on, because your image of Shakira was more, like you said, like whenever, wherever,
and I think,
hips don't lie, things like that.
Yeah.
So this song must have been a surprise when you first listened.
Yeah, definitely. That was definitely one. And I think there's a couple of other songs in the album which have kind of that kind of feel as well. Speaking of other songs, which other songs did you want to move on to next?
I would love to talk about Ojos Así,
Yes.
the final track on the album.
When I say this was an obsession for us, it took over our lives, this song.
Yes. This song features some Middle Eastern musical influences, which it's important to note that that is a part of her heritage. She's not just pure Colombian, but one of her parents has Middle Eastern roots, and I cannot remember the country right now. Jacob, do you?
Lebanese.
That's right, Lebanese. So she has said before, the belly dancing that she does, she feels like it was just genetic. Nobody taught her how to do it, but when she was a child, she just automatically would hear these instruments, the drum and the beat, and her hips would automatically, she was belly dancing to it even as a young child, like a 4-year-old little girl. And I love the fact that she brings those elements into her songs.
Mm-hmm.
And this song is important to note because this song introduced the music world to the fact that she could belly dance. This was the first one.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
Ah, I didn't know that. Just before then, I'm just briefly breezing through Wikipedia. The name of Shakira is actually Arabic for grateful.
Yes.
Which
I think it's graceful.
Okay. Grateful and stuff. So she has kind of roots in kind of Arabian music and the Middle Eastern music stuff. So she's kind of delving into that music culture. And I can kind of see that kind of blending of this song. I can kind of see how this kind of led to her eventually doing the again I mentioned earlier the 2010 World Cup song, which incorporates quite a lot of African music. And I think African artists are guest starring on that as well, because it kind of does very similar to what the opener does with the mariachi / ranchera music, incorporating that into kind of like a pop song, and gives like the like an encore. And what I mean by that is the previous song, which is a slower song, kind of could work as finale. But I always think that an album ending should always feel like you got like a song that could end the album as your penultimate track, and then then you finish with a big finish on the actual final one. And I think it's
like the encore.
Yeah. Yeah, and I quite like how this kind of builds up to that kind of finale, that kind of the actual finale, and kind of taking the key aspects that she does in her music in terms of like incorporating different aspects of music from different cultures into kind of a pop slash almost alternative slash Latin slash any genre of music slash I've overdone the slashes, but yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, she makes her own style and sound. Like there's nothing else like this.
But yeah, and I always think it works quite well. I'm right in saying, was this another single?
Yes, correct. And so the music video for this was sort of her belly dancing debut to the world.
Oh, okay.
You typically, before this, you would have only seen her behind a microphone with her guitar in hand.
So when you say that this like overtook and basically dominated your lives, what do you mean? Was this like the only song that you listened to for?
No, well, of the album, I think this is one of the first ones that we were obsessed with, especially because there are some lyrics in Arabic, and for whatever reason, but just because we were, 15, however old we were, we became fixated on learning that and being able to say, we can sing a song in Spanish. We know how to sing some lines in Arabic,
We learned the Arabic part phonetically, and I'm sure we both can still do it today. And yes. We're so in love with this moment. Also, this one, if we're talking about wordplay and imagery, this song is just imagery, just like crazy imagery, the entire song.
And lyrically, especially. Because she's sort of recounting a tale of her travels and everything she's seen, all the things that she's seen over the world, strange and unusual, but never has she seen eyes like this.
Right.
Which is your eyes.
So the general gist is like, I've seen this, I've been here, blah, 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 but nothing compares to who she's singing about's eyes. So it's just saying that
right. And everything she names is sort of like unusual
wild
things.
Like a woman underneath her camel, a saint in prison, what is it? A river of salt. It's just these weird sort of storybook things that she's seen. And it's all to say like, wow, I've seen these amazing things, but the only thing I still am transfixed on and that drives me is to find eyes like yours.
That's quite interesting when you compare the first song, which is on about being struck blind. Being struck blind when it's like, is it blind and dumb or blind deaf? Or I'm not sure what the exact translation of the title is. Of the first one, but it's an interesting bookend. Then if the first song is about like going blind because of this person that she thinks is great, and then the last song is on about like the best sight she's seen in the world is someone's eyes. There's a nice bookend, and it's like one of those annoying things where someone goes, oh yeah, a first track and a last track that kind of link together. That's another thing that Matt likes in albums. Let's do that. And I'm like,
right.
But yeah, I do quite like the symmetry of, or the kind of like the thematic link between them.
Right.
Yeah, and I said like they always say that the eyes are the windows to the soul. Yeah, I quite like that.
And it does have a slightly different lyrical vibe. It's important to note that most of the album all songs were written by her and then co-written. Some were co-written with her longtime collaborator, Luis Fernando Ochoa. But this song in particular, actually, it shares this in common with Ciega Sordomuda, is they were both co-written with different people that did not help write the rest of the album. So Ciega Sordomuda is Shakira and someone named Estefano Salgado. And I don't really know much. I don't know that person. But then the last track, Ojos Así, is co-written with two people named Pablo Flores and Javier Garza. And this is the only track that they write on. The rest of it is mostly Shakira and her co-writer. So I do think that's one of the reasons, the main reason why this song lyrically is
so different.
It's a little bit of a departure from the other songs, because in this one, she's telling the tale of a journey. She's relaying all the things she's seen as she has gone on this journey. And it sounds more of like a tale,
Oh, okay. I think we might just have time for one more song. So if you want to make the very tough decision
Jacob?
Oh no.
It's all on you.
Well, I think we have to talk about the title track, Dónde Están los Ladrones, because it does have a story behind it.
Yes, this is the story. From what I've read, the story behind the name of the album.
Correct. Based on a true story.
Based on a true story, she got her luggage or something stolen, and it just so happened that all of her song lyrics for the album, the original album that this was supposed to be, were in that luggage, and she couldn't recreate all of them. Like, she was going
not
through
the
something.
lyrics.
Not the lyrics?
Oh, no, not the lyrics. The demos, the songs.
Oh, the actual songs.
Yes.
And so she couldn't just recreate them, so she had to make this whole new album.
Oh, okay. So basically there's a lost album. Well, demos of a lost Shakira album somewhere out there.
There is a lost album that it was pre Dónde Están los Ladrones. And I think I have read before that when she started over, she didn't want to try and remember the old stuff. She just started completely over.
Oh, so this song, the title track, is kind of based on that event. Is that right? Or
maybe it was just lyrics, because I had to go check myself. But either way, it was a lot of hard work.
It was a lot of hard work that she couldn't just redo. I believe the track is a little more contemplative than just like, hey, some people stole my lyrics. I think the track is a little bit more of like, we're all sort of thieves in different ways, and who could they be? And it's a little more.
We're all thieves in a way.
Yeah, we're all thieves. So the whole song is exploring that.
Oh, okay.
It could be the neighbor. It could be that person over there.
The preachers in the churches.
Right. The woman with the powdered nose. It could be the person that wrote this song.
Yeah, what if it's me? She even says in the chorus,
right, what if
it's me?
And her explanation to that is she was obsessed with, like, she couldn't stop thinking about being robbed. And she came up with this song, Where Are the Thieves? And of course, it's Shakira. She goes way deeper than that, because to her, a thief isn't just somebody who steals something. It's anybody can be a thief of something else. You know, like we use the term today, energy vampires.
Mm-hmm.
And in her words, she says there are thieves who steal feeling, space, time, dreams, and even rights, she has said. So we're all different. Each of us is a different type of thief. Because again, that's Shakira. It can't just be a thief as somebody who steals. It's like, wait a second. Where are they? What is a thief? How do you define a thief? Anybody could be a thief. Even I'm a thief.
Yeah.
And then she can start writing the song, right?
So it's basically like the song from, is it Good Burger? I'm a dude, she's a dude, he's a dude, but just thieves. I don't know if
I don't know that reference.
Sure. I don't know, but sure.
Yeah. No, there's a song called I'm a dude, he's a dude, he's basically stars Keenan and Kel.
Right.
I remember this.
What a throwback.
Yeah. But basically you just change the words to they're a thief, he's a thief. There's always something stealing something, and it's very kind of contemplative. But from the Google translation that I've got, there's a bit in the verse 2 where it says even offering concerts, and basically considering the stuff going around about kind of like websites that add loads and loads of fees onto tickets, onto ticket fee. Yeah,
she was. ahead of her time calling out those ticketing websites, wasn't she?
Yeah, and on the time recording, the episode wouldn't have been aired. It's the next episode being aired on the time recording. I'm doing an episode on Pearl Jam, and Pearl Jam were very kind of this will be released by the time you listen to this. So the episode on Pearl Jam, I think I've spoken to the guest, and they were kind of very vocal against basically Ticketmaster, especially. So that's So I just find it very weird that topics come up in 2 episodes on the trot. But so that's Where Are the Thieves, which is the translation of the album title as well. So the whole album is called that. So that's the title track. And I think if we move on to briefly the critical reception, it did quite well. Alex Henderson from AllMusic gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. Saying the album was arguably the finest and most essential album she recorded in the 90s, and stated that beside its lyrics, the album will impress even non-Spanish speaking listeners with its attractive melodies and the emotion the artist brings to her songs, which I believe this podcast has proven that
yes.
Yeah, so it's got favourable in Billboard, 4 out of 5 on Sputnik Music and the new Rolling Stone album guide. In July 2017, the album ranked at number 95 on the list for the 150 greatest female albums of all time by the National Public Radio. So
Too low.
That's the greatest female albums of all time. That's still like a. I'm gonna throw this trick that I did on your podcast. If you consider the amount of numbers and albums they are, 95 is still.
Here we go.
95 is still quite high. In terms of like sales and its charting, it got to number 1 in Argentina, it got to number 2 in the US Heatseekers albums chart, it got to number 1 in the top Latin albums in the US, and the Latin pop albums it got to number 1 as well. It got to 131 in the Billboard 200, it got to 73 in Switzerland and 22 in Spain, number 78 in Holland, as well as 79th in Germany.
That's impressive.
Interesting.
Yeah. Again, very interestingly, the lack of the United Kingdom, but that kind of makes sense because I don't think Latin music will be that big over here. I don't think there isn't a big Spanish demographic on the same level as kind of the US. So I don't think it would have made a dent in the UK. Over here, so that's probably why it's not in here. But in terms of certified sales, it sold 4 million worldwide. It sold 920,000 in the US, going platinum. It went twice platinum in Mexico with 500,000, 4 times platinum in Argentina, 3 times platinum in Colombia, Venezuela, 3 times platinum Spain, 4 times platinum in Chile, 3 times platinum in Turkey, Central America 4 times platinum, 2 times platinum in Uruguay. And didn't get a certification in Brazil, but it got 80,000 sold in Brazil. So in that area, the Central American area, it did really, really well in a lot of Spanish-speaking countries. So it did kind of really well there as well. And you can kind of see how with the success of that, they thought, okay, the next step is to try and crack the worldwide English market. So you can kind of see how the dollar signs were appearing in people's eyes.
Yes, Emilio Estefan, he's like, okay, you've got to record the crossover album. And there almost was an English version of this album to be her first English language debut, but eventually it was scrapped. They started on all new material, and the only song that remains from that reworked era is a song called Eyes Like Yours on her next album, Laundry Service. It's an English translation of Ojos Así.
Okay. Do you think that they did the right thing in going with brand new material, or would you have thought, or would you like to hear what an English version of?
It does to me feel like a step was skipped, because it's a really big jump from this album to her crossover debut, and like I can only imagine. This doesn't apply to me, but I just hypothetically, I can only imagine being a Shakira fan, and Dónde Están los Ladrones is out. She's Shakira, And then what a 180 she did wherever it came out.
Yeah.
It was like, and just as a Shakira fan, of course, I would have loved to see the English version of this album. There is an English version of the song Inévitable, which is spelled like inevitable, and it means that. There's an English version of that she only performed live, but it was never released.
I do think, part of me thinking that, I think because of the impact of Whenever, Wherever, I do think that perhaps if they went the English translation route, there's probably an alternative universe where that probably would have dampened any impact that song would have had. So
sure. Also, at this time for this album, I don't think Shakira was as competent in her English skills. She really honed those on Laundry Service.
Correct.
And in the time between this album and Laundry Service, she really put in the work. So I think if we had gotten translations for these songs, I don't think we would have gotten that Shakira touch on the translation as much, because it could have just been literal translations. And I don't think we would have had that magic that the Spanish has and that we saw in Laundry Service in her English work. So I'm kind of glad that she waited until she was more comfortable and went English with Laundry Service instead.
Right. I'm not saying the English version would have been fantastic. I'm just saying I want it, as a fan.
I want anything. I want more. Give me, but...
She needs to come back and revisit this album.
Oh my God, again. Imagine a complete remaster, sort of like Kylie's Abbey Road's session album.
She needs to really get under the hood of these songs and sort of rework and rethink, and that's my dream. I would love something like that.
Yeah, maybe one day we'll keep fingers crossed.
We'll pray about it.
Yeah. So we as we're gearing up towards the end of our conversation, so have either of you seen Shakira live?
No. Sadly.
The closest we've ever gotten is just watching her MTV Unplugged together over and over again, which everyone should go do because it's amazing. But no, I think we would kill to do that now.
I mean, does she tour that often? I'm not sure.
She has roughly had a tour for each major album since Pies Descalzos.
But we grew up in a place where it was really difficult to go to major concerts because where we were, it was minimum 2 hours, max like 6 to 8 to get to a major venue that people would actually perform at. So it's a huge undertaking.
We were like at least 6 hours from a major city that she might have come through. And
yeah, but I think hopefully again, so what we need to know is keep fingers crossed not only for an English translation of the album, but also for Shakira to play
a revisit.
Yeah.
Oh yes, that would be good too.
Yeah, or Shakira to play a venue 15 minutes down the road from where you live.
Right.
Yeah. So if people want to listen to other albums from Shakira, where would you suggest they go next?
Definitely after Laundry Service came out, the follow-up to that was sort of 2 albums, an English album and a Spanish album, and the Spanish version is called, the English version is Oral Fixation, the Spanish version is called Fijación Oral, which is the same title in Spanish. That is definitely your next step. Yes.
It's a totally different evolution, totally different sound. It's more of Shakira exploring, this more mature sound and topics, and it's a beautiful, perfect album.
So is it both the same songs, just in different English and Spanish, or is it 2 different?
It's half and half. There are songs on both albums that are the English and the Spanish version, but for really, actually, I think mostly it's separate songs.
Oh, okay. So that's the Oral Fixation, and
Volume 1 is the Spanish one.
Okay, and I'm not gonna attempt to try and pronounce it.
Oh, come on, you got it.
Fijación oral.
Fijación oral.
There you go.
Take that, my German teacher who said I couldn't do that. Now we get into the very important question, the song for the Spotify playlist. Now, for anyone who's not listened to this before, what this is, I'm going to be asking Jacob and Erin to pick one song to go onto the Spotify onto the Spotify Hall of Fame playlist. Now, I can't veto, it's whatever the guest says goes. Now, usually, this is just an existential crisis from one person to pick a song from an album, but before recording, it was revealed that the two of you haven't actually decided one yet, and it's going to be very interesting to see you duke it out, and I feel like I'm going to be witnessing a live rendition of Hits Don't Lie. So, Jacob and Erin, which song are you going to pick? And good luck.
Okay,
well, I'm wondering if we have the same one in mind.
Before, I would have said yes, but now after listening to your picks, now I'm having some doubt.
Oh.
As far as listening to your picks that you chose to talk about.
Oh. Well, how about this, Matt? What if you counted down to 3? Or what if you counted down from 3 and we both say the song that we think and we see what happens?
Okay. Now, if you both say the same one, I'm going to be very disappointed. But I think you're going to rob the audience of like potential entertainment. But you know what? Let's try it. 3, 2, 1.
Ojos así.
Oh!
Let me get some popcorn.
I will give you Ojos así. I
want to know why. I do too.
Two is just it's a beautiful song. It is just a beautiful song. I don't know what to say more other than it is beautiful and kind of
it's a traditional ballad, which gives it more.
You don't get a ton from Shakira, actually. So I think it's one of the most powerful tracks on the album.
Let's do it. Let's pick 2.
Oh, you don't even want to fight for Ojos así?
No, listening to you now, I'm like, how would this fit on a playlist? People know belly dance Shakira. People know that, right? We're expecting to hear a belly dance sound from her.
Uh-huh.
But you don't really get that good classic power ballad from her as much anymore. Well, as far as singles. So, yeah, let's do it.
Okay, that was easy.
Oh, and I brought the popcorn and everything.
Well, you have to remember, we have a lot of episodes under our belt at this point. We are used to arguing about songs with each other. I think we've just gotten really efficient at it.
I was about to say, I think we've just streamlined it.
But no, okay, so 2 is the next song to join the Spotify playlist Hall of Fame.
Lovely.
To which that will follow Rearview Mirror by Pearl Jam, which precedes Meds by a band called Placebo. Maybe you've heard of them, Jacob, but
I don't think I have.
Yeah. 2 then becomes the 93rd song to join the Spotify playlist Hall of Fame, and
beautiful,
ever getting closer to number 100. So, okay, so we're now at the end of the conversation, Jacob and Erin, and it's been a lot of fun having you both on for like a first. It's like a first of having like 2 guests, and like the combination of the shared kind of experiences that you had with it was very interesting, and I generally like this a lot more than I was expecting to. I'm gonna be
great.
I'll be honest with that. I was not expecting a kind of like a weird and a very interesting mix of kind of 90s indie, 90s indie / alternative with kind of like Latin pop. Yeah,
that's one reason I was really excited to do this album with you. I don't think a lot of people think of this sound when they think of Shakira.
Yeah.
And for me and Erin, this is what we think of. This is why we are so staunchly behind Shakira, because we know that she can do all these amazing things.
Yeah, it's been like a eye-opening experience, and just to learn more about Shakira, who seems to have just always been around. As in like a 30-year career. I'll be interested to figure out whether she's actually been around the music industry longer than your friendship. That's what. That's how long. That's how long.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think we've been friends longer than her career, just mathematically.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about it,
Yeah.
we probably went to the same daycare around.
We definitely went to the
somewhere
same daycare,
between.
yeah.
I know, but from between 90 to 91, sometime around
right. Yeah.
So you've just got the edge. You just got the edge ahead. But yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun. But if people want to find you and Hits Don't Lie, where can they find you?
Well, Jacob, take it away.
Well, Erin, you can find and listen to Hits Don't Lie wherever you get your podcasts, and you can talk to us on Twitter, TikTok now, and Instagram at Hits Don't Lie Pod. Do come and connect with us. We have a lot of fun over there. And you can listen to our Songs of 1995 episode featuring Matt from Pick a Disc.
Yeah, and
that was such a fun episode.
So much fun.
Part of me was fully expecting to be talking about the Batman soundtrack, if I'm completely honest, but to be fair, I think most of that's been covered already in that episode.
True.
Yes.
But no, I was saying this to Jacob during the episode on meds that we did. But I generally do love the podcast. I think it's great. I do like you want to like a very good kind of duo, like podcast hosting duo. A lot of fun to listen to, and I'm quite honoured that you both decided to come on at the same time. And that you somehow managed to accept me coming onto your podcast. So that's great. And I can't recommend Hits Don't Lie enough. It's pretty much, I think it drops into my feed on like a Thursday. I think it's usually on a Thursday morning. So it's usually what I listen to on the drive to work on that morning, more or less after it refreshes. So it's a mainstay in my podcast listening feed. So again, if you haven't listened to it, I can't recommend it enough. And I'll accept the payment for that advert later. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. We've just run out of budget.
Our PayPal account just got deactivated. I am so sorry.
But no, but yeah, we are now at the very end, and I'll have to say thank you ever so much, Jacob and Erin, for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Pick a Disc, and I've been your host, Matthew Latham. Our theme music is Pump by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. Pick a Disc is hosted by the We Made This podcast network, and you can find them on www.spreaker.com/user/WeMadeThis. You can find the Pick a Disc show site on www.spreaker.com/show/pickadisc. You can find us on all the usual social media type places like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter under Pick a Disc. You can also email us on pickadisc@gmail.com. Until next time, happy listening to all those discs that you are picking. Goodbye.
Hello, and this is Frame to Frame, part of the We Made This podcast network. We are a podcast that take two seemingly unconnected films and slam them together with the most obscure theme that we can find. I'm Andy Williams.
And I'm Sean Wilson.
And every Wednesday, you'll be able to find out a little bit more about the different themes and different films that we look into. You can hear moments such as this.
Gwyneth Paltrow has as many Oscars as David Cronenberg. That's just wrong in every sense of the word.
Yeah, but you can't get a candle that smells like David Cronenberg. No, wait, I'm not going to go there.
No, don't do that.
I mean, we've done nearly 10 minutes on why you dislike Zack Snyder, and that was just the first person that I mentioned as a talented name within the
now
film.
you've got to take us in a positive direction, please.
Okay. Jared Butler is the lead of this film.
Oh, that's not a good start. That's really not a good start at all. Keep going. I just want to say, I really love your philosophy about no matter how good or bad a movie is, there's a lot of effort that goes into it. I really like that philosophy because I find myself grappling with that. It's kind of like it's really easy to tear something down because the finished product that comes out in the cinema or on streaming is nominally bad, but it has actually had a fair amount of effort that went into it, regardless of how that's planned.
Be sure to check your podcast app of choice every Wednesday to find new episodes. You'll be able to like, subscribe, and find us on social media at Frame to Frame Pod.